Time to get dirty. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 8 of the 135th scale Dragon SdKfz184 Elefant. In the last episode, part 7, I got all the paint prep done, primed the vehicle with MRP Primer Red RAL 8020, my first time using MRP. Then using Tamiya XF60, X22 Gloss, and Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. I mixed me up a batch of paint and sprayed the dark yellow. Then I used MRP Olive Green RAL 6003 to do the camouflage. Once I got that done, then I painted the tracks, and for that I mixed up some Tamiya XF9 Hull Red with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner, and that was just for a base. Then I did the hand painting of the tracks, the spare tracks, which for that I used the Ammo by MIG Rust tracks, and I just used a paintbrush for that. And then used Tamiya XF61 dark green for the muzzle brake cover. So with all that said, I can now start doing some weathering. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some tests with the Ammo by MIG brown wash for German dark yellow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this brush here, and I'm going to slather some on that's not going to work on one of these wheels, just to see what it looks like. Hopefully it won't stain it irreparably if it looks nasty, because if it does, I'm going to have a really dirty wheel. So I'm going to use this and use this large golden Taklon, or whatever they call it, brush. So I'm going to slather it on there and wipe off the excess. So I want this to look pretty grubby. I'm going to try something a little bit different and go with a lot of dark dirt looking business. And then I'm just going to commit dark dirt looking business, and then use some of the famous or infamous, depending on your take on it, dry brushing to bring some of the highlights back into prominence on top of this wash. So I'm going to do this on all these wheels. I'm just going to do the wheels right now, and we'll come back, take a look once it dries so I can clean it up. Go ahead and do the drive sprockets too. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, since my camera goofed up, frustrating, I'm going to use this German dark yellow by MIG, Ammo by MIG, and brown wash for German dark yellow, and I am just slathering it all over the wheels. This is the first time I've done something like this particularly, but sometimes you just gotta do stuff. I'm also going to do it on the tracks, so I want to darken those up a bit, get rid of that reddish cast. let that sit and then come back with a Q-tip slash cotton bud slash earbud slash whatever you want to call it, and get rid of the excess. So let's see, already got the wheels done, so I'm just going to do the tracks here like this. Keep in mind, this is the first time I've done a complete kit, completely assembled and painted after being assembled. First time. I usually use a totally different method for doing this kind of stuff, but use this long skinny brush to get back in there. Alright, so let's let that dry for a bit, and then we'll come back and take a Q-tip to it. Okay, so now I'll start getting some of this off of here. So again, I'm just using a Q-tip here, and I'm just gonna kind of rub off the excess, not being too super careful about it. But there we go. That looks a lot better. It's kind of a dirty look. So let me what I'm going to do on this side, so you can kind of see the difference, is I'm going to do one wheel and leave the other one, and then that way you can kind of get a better idea of how, you know, how it looks different. So I'm putting, whoa, that's a bit much. Trying to do this one-handed, I didn't get it. Wow. Soak some of that up. Good grief. I didn't get enough out of the brush. So anyway, I'm gonna do that. Then once it dries, I'll show a comparison to that one there. Okay, so here you can see the difference in the look of the wheel, and you can use the old Q-tip to wipe off the excess on the surface, and it leaves it all deposited in the detail. So that's the difference you get. This one doesn't look quite as flat as these, so that's what it looks like. So I am going to, since I've demonstrated it and there's no need to show it over and over and over again, I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these wheels and then come back. Alright, so the running gear and tracks have all been washed, so to speak. So next thing I need to do before I get too far, I almost forgot, is I need to put the decals on this kit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the decals I'm going to use. dip them in water, and then let them loosen up the backing. And for my decal fluid, since it's going on a smooth surface, I'm not using microset and microsol like I usually do. I'm just going to use the Tamiya Mark Fit decal solution. One easy step. Okay, they're loosened up, so I'm going to get this here fluid and I'm going to put it where the decal goes, and it goes about right here. And no, I didn't gloss first. I do sometimes, but on a smooth surface like this, I'm not really worried about it. And if it gets all weird and bubbly and strange things like that, well, it's just meant to be. So it goes right about here. And the nice thing is I have the top of this Zimmerit to help line it up. So there it is, and it went down there pretty flat, so I'll just roll this over it. Make sure there ain't no bubbles. These are Tamiya decals. You know why? Because I lost the Dragon decals. Yes, I admit it. I can be one of those what you call boneheads at times. So the other decal's ready. Put that one on right about there. Oh, okay, there we go. Almost got crinkly on me. That would have been sad. Okay, now the trick is to see if I can move this bleeding thing. I'll use this brush here because it ain't quite straight. There we go. Lovely. So I'll do the same thing with this. Just kind of roll it back and forth. You know, there's often the argument that you must gloss. And although it can be helpful at times, especially when you're trying to get something maneuvered, you know, if like it's maybe a multi-part decal or whatever. But I will say this, if you have a slight bit of texture, or not texture, but flatness to the paint finish, it can help when doing this, because at least for me, I found that at times I'll go to roll my decal like this to get the extra fluid and any bubbles out, and it'll slide around and get out of position, and then I've already mashed it down. It just makes it a hassle. So, you know, just one of those things to think about. So we'll let that dry, and then I can start getting ready to do some pin washes and stuff like that. So the plan is, on the Zimmerit, I'm going to use more of a, what's sometimes referred to as a sludge wash, where you just take your wash and slather it over the whole thing, and then use, you know, a rag or Q-tip or whatever to wipe away the excess. Don't think I want to do that on the whole thing because I don't want it to darken up these yellows too much, but I think it'll work fine on the Zimmerit because it'll be easy to wipe off just the highlight texture of the Zimmerit, if that makes sense. So I'm going to start down here. And that way, whenever I wipe it off, it will leave deposits in the recessed detail of the Zimmerit. Like thusly. See, let's try a little bit more. I'm going to do it a section at a time. Like I'll do the rear part, then I'll move on to the sides. So, like that. Like that. Like that. So I'm going to continue doing this on all of this, and then when it's ready I will come back and we'll wipe it off. So here you can see I've done the wash on the back, pin wash. And looks pretty good. This looks a little dark in comparison to this, but I think that's the nature of the beast, in this case an elephant, because this is going to hold more dirt and grime and stuff than the flat surfaces would. However, I think once I do some more weathering and stuff on it, it'll kind of help blend it in a little bit better, a little bit more than what it is now. But anyway, that's what I've done there. So I'm going to work my way around the vehicle. You've seen how I do it, so I'm not going to do it on camera. So I'm going to continue on. Once I get all that done, then I'll come back. We'll take a look at what's next. Snap decision, folks. I went ahead and did an old school sludge wash on this thing. It darkened it up, but I'm also going to do an old school dry brush job on this thing. So this is going to be kind of an old school build, folks. So can't do any of that though until this all this enamel, or not enamel, but mineral spirits and this enamel wash dries really well, so it's going to have to sit overnight. So I'm going to pause here and then come back and start doing some dry wash business, or dry brush stuff. All right, now that all this stuff's dry, I can start doing some dry brushing. And for that, I'm going to be using Vallejo Model Color Desert Yellow. All this is going to do is just highlight some of the details and that kind of thing. So we'll put some in my little palette kind of thing here. Clean the bottle so I don't get any goop. Notice how nice and clean that is. I mean, I'm not one to brag, but you know, I like to keep my paint bottles as fresh as possible. So I'm just weird like that. Tip of the day on these Vallejo Model Color bottles. What I like to do, and this is not an original idea, it's just, you know, I'm sure I've seen it somewhere, but I like to take the color and put it on the top of the cap like that, so it is easily recognizable in my paint drawer. So it's easy to just look over and say, I think I want that color green today for whatever I'm doing. So just thought I'd share that. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's see how this works. I haven't done dry brushing in a while. But you get most of the paint off of the brush, and then you just ever so lightly hit the highlights like that, and it gives you a bit more contrast between the color that one has sprayed and the wash and everything else. It's just a way to kind of bring out the detail, add a little bit of contrast, make the edges pop a little bit. Now, people do a similar thing right now. As a matter of fact, I saw it on a build I was watching the other day. And they'll take a lightened color, a lightened shade of whatever their vehicle color is. Oh, there went some stinking photo etch. I'll have to glue that back on. And they will pick out the high points, like maybe paint the top of this, paint the top of this handle, paint these bolt heads, just to give it some contrast, and then it kind of blends in the further the weathering process goes along. So this is kind of similar, it's just not as precise, and if you're not careful, you can overdo it. So like that hasp right there and the edge of the lid, this kind of brings it out a little bit. I'll do a little bit more and then I'll do the rest off camera. I just want to demonstrate a little bit. Let's demonstrate something on top. It's a little bit easier. Now, it would probably be wise. See, it's catching the edges. It would be wise for me to use a lighter green to do any of these edges right here where the green camouflage is. So right now I'm mainly focusing on the yellow parts. So you can see the difference between this side and this side here. It's subtle, but it works. And Tamiya Vallejo model color paint is a good paint to do this with because it's so thick. Because you want your paint kind of thick, so it's just so it doesn't have a tendency to streak. See, it'll catch the high parts of the welds or the flame cut part there or whatever that is, to further add contrast between the wash that's in the recessed portions and the high points. So hopefully you can see what's going on. If you get a smear, then just wipe it off because this is water-based paints. So it's kind of nice like that. So I'm going to continue on around the whole thing like that. All right, so got the dry brushing done for that color. So the next thing to do is I want to do a pretty heavy wash of Untitled 035 buff on the tracks. And what I wanted to do there is to make it look like dust deposits and all that nastiness. So what I'm going to do, put a little bit of this in. Let me use this one here. Give me some clean thinner. Just regular odorless mineral spirits. Put that in my palette. Oh man, drop some on there. Oop, knock my brush off on the floor. I'm just moving right along. Okay, so then I'm going to take some of this here. And just mix it up in here like this. Not sure if I'm going to use this brush or a larger one. Let's see. Let's see if it's opaque enough. No, that's not going to work. I need a little bit thicker. Because I want it to look like built up dust and dirt in the tracks. So let's turn this around here. Just had a conversation about my lighting situation that just don't really like my lighting. It's way too harsh, way too many shadows. So my esteemed colleague Jim Deck of Chatterbox fame hipped me to an idea that I'd kind of thought about but didn't really know if it would be something that would work that great. So if I try it out, I'll be sure and tell everybody. So I'm just going to go around the tracks doing this. Getting the all the detail filled in. So I'm going to do that off camera because you're seeing what I'm doing here, so there's no need for me to continue on camera with it. I don't want to bore you too much, so I will be back directly. All right, next up, I'm going to start putting some dark mud smudges. This is kind of a grayish brown. It's nowhere near the color that's on the tube. Untitled 130 dark mud. And what I've done is I put some in my little palette thing here, and I've got my brush, and I'm just basically applying it on the lower edges right now. I mean, I'm going to do more than this, but I'm putting it along the bottom edges of, watch, like this. No, I didn't paint the other side. This isn't going in a contest, so ain't nobody going to be looking at it with mirrors and such. So don't hate me for it. Okay, and I'm just going to cake this stuff on here like this. And then kind of blend it out along the edges just to get some build up along the lower extremities. The nice thing about these is if you get too much or if you don't like it, just get some enamel thinner or odorless mineral spirits, whatever you got, and just clean it off. Just want to get some like deposits built up filthiness. Just like this. So I'm going to go around the bottom edges and continue to do this. And then come back for more. Okay, now with that done, I'm going to work some more on the tracks again. This time using my little bit wider angular shader. I'm just going to get a little bit of this on here, and I'm going to start working it in like this, just to get a little bit more dusty along the edges. I'm just really scrubbing it on there. Just to mainly accentuate what I've already done with the with that wash I did earlier. So I'm going to continue on around with that. The next thing I'm going to do before I get too far is I need to polish up some of these parts, like the guide teeth. Part of the track that comes in contact with the steel road wheels, and the outside of the road wheels themselves. Now I'm not going to be able to do a really bang up job on this because I just can't reach some of it. That's one of the drawbacks of painting a kit this way, but it'll get the idea. So I'm just using this graphite pencil here. It's a 6B. I don't think it really matters which hardness or softness one uses, but this is something that's generally done more effectively off of the kit. I'm also going to have to do the teeth on the sprockets as well. But anyway, I'm going to work on this. All right, so I think that's about it I'm going to do with the oils. So next thing I want to do is I want to use the airbrush and airbrush some dust on, just kind of like an overall layer. Whoa, nothing heavy, just to kind of give it an overall dusty appearance. But I need to let these oils kind of cure up a bit, so I think I'm going to let this sit for a bit and then do that. Okay, excuse me, a little froggy today. And looking at this, I'm getting near to the end, getting to the final steps of weathering and such. But one thing I want to do is I want to dirty up these wheels a little bit more. I just feel they're too uniform and too blah. I know it's a complicated term, but I'm sure you can figure it out. So first, I'm going to take some of my I'm telling dark mud, and I'm going to dirty these things up a little bit. So I'm going to get my let's see, this little brush here, and I'm just gonna randomly splotch some dark stuff around here, thusly not going to be real concerned about uniformity from wheel to wheel. And just get it all like that. And then I'm going to do a little bit in here as well, just to kind of dirty these up. And then I'm going to use one of my blending brushes and just kind of stab it and stipple it on there. And again, I'll demonstrate a little bit and then I'll do the rest off camera so as not to end up with an enormously long video that I can sometimes manage to do. So just taking this, let's see, this one might be too damaged. Let's try this one here. I need to get some better stippling brushes, but I just don't have any right now, so I'm going to have to use what I've got on hand. And then just kind of mash it in there. Again, I'm not wanting to get it all blendy looking. I'm wanting it to be more splotchy. And I don't know how much you're actually going to be able to see on the video. I'll be able to tell later when I watch this segment, but just kind of, yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's looking good. I may have to add a little bit more to some of these other ones, but so you just dirty it up like this, just, you know, basic grime and grubbiness. So I'm going to continue to work on this. I may add a little bit more from one wheel to the next, but you get the idea. Also, while I'm doing this, I think I'm going to add a little bit more on some of these edges, like back here a little bit. I want it just a little bit dirtier back here, not too much, but it just seems a little clean. So I'll do a little bit there. That's the thing, you can add a little bit at a time, which brings me to a point. I learned a very swell lesson one time in an art class. I won't get into it, but it had to do with overworking something. Now, sometimes it can be to your detriment. There's a delicate balance between getting something not quite enough
and too much. And there's a balance in between. It can be arranged, but it's still, it's going to be, it's kind of tricky. And if you get working, sometimes people will be working on a weathering, the weathering aspect of a kit, and it can get too much. It ends up looking sloppy, or I don't really know how to explain it. It just looks messy instead of weathered. So, you know, it's just taking it a bit too much overboard. Now, I know a lot of people can, you know, say, oh, it can't be too weathered, blah, blah, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about, because some things get absolutely disgusting looking. However, it's all in the way that it's accomplished. It can be worked so much that it becomes just a mess. Instead of looking weathered, it looks like somebody spilled thinner on the wing of their aircraft and they tried to wipe it off with a rag or something, and you end up with this nasty splotchy mess. So that's what it looks like. It looks more like a mess than you know, weathering. So my problem is I tend to pull it back too soon. I don't go quite far enough. There's been a few models that I've built that I've gotten a good spot in the weathering, and it looks like I want it to, or it looks like the reference that I have, or whatever. But in general, I tend to err on the side of caution. Some people may say, oh, you need to take chances, and well, that's true, and I do very occasionally. I haven't done it in a while, but it's one of those things, you know. Sometimes I don't take it far enough. So there's that. There's a delicate balance between not enough and too much. Why am I saying that? Well, just because. Something to consider. So I've seen some nice looking models looking pretty good, and then it just goes one step too far, or maybe 10 steps too far, and it ends up just looking like a mess. So there's that. Just a little bit of food for thought. Does that mean I'm perfect at it? Not hardly. You've seen some of my videos if you've been watching this, or some of my models if you've been watching this channel very long. And no, perfect doesn't enter anywhere near the equation. So that's that. So I'm going to continue working on this, and we'll come back for the next phase. All right, what I'm doing right now, I'm starting to add a little bit more grubbiness to the top. So I applied some dots around the hatch areas, and you know, just to make it look like there's traffic there and stuff. I'm not getting way overboard, but it is, you know, changing the color of it a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing here, just in the corners. Just build up, just to break up the color and the evenness of the paint, if that makes sense. Trying to put in areas where there might be traffic from the crew. I've already got some down here and down in here, so I just wanted to do a little bit more up here. And what I'm using is a slightly dampened brush, dampened with odorless mineral spirits, and I just broke that flipping hook off again. Man, that's the third time. Oh well. So I'm just trying to make it look not so uniform in tone. So you can see what I'm doing here. Not being real careful to make it smooth or anything. I just wanted to make it look blotchy. Grubby handprints and boot prints and stuff like that. It's kind of funny because this is usually the part of the process wherein little parts, especially photo etch parts, get knocked off. So if it happens, don't be too sad because they'll glue right back on. Kind of like that. So we'll let that sit up for a little bit. And then I'll come back and take a look at it. So next, I want to do some staining with engine grease. Now, I'm going to focus this on areas where there should be grease, oil, whatever. This Untitled engine grease is just phenomenal stuff. I love it. It really looks good. As a matter of fact, I'm going to thin some of it and use it as a wash in some places and just use it full strength in others. So what I'll do, whoa, looky there. Yikes. It's not as thick as the rest of the oils by Untitled 502. It is quite a bit runnier, more like oil and grease. But I am going to thin that down some with just a little bit of thinner, odorless mineral spirits once again. I don't want to get it too thin, just thin enough to run a little bit. So we'll see how that is. So let's well, if that doesn't look like oily, greasy stuff, I don't know what does. And I like the fact that it's got a brownish tint to it, which makes it, you know, just a little bit more dirty oil-like. If you ever drained the oil out of an old Volkswagen, right there, that's the color of it. So I'm just gonna see, look at that, right around stuff like that. That's what I'm wanting to do, just to make it look like. I'm not gonna do it all over, just in certain places. Just to make it look like oil and grease and stuff is leaked hither and yon. And I'll use it full strength in some areas. Let's go around here like this. I'm going to come back with some full strength around there. So I'm going to spin it around here. Do this side. not real versed on the way this stuff was put together back in the old days, but I'm just using my best guess. Just to get some oiliness here and there. Alright, so now I'm going to get some full strength. Make it look like a little more greasy stains here and there, just to break it up a little bit. I'm going to go up to the engine deck. And do just some staining around there. Just dab it around a bit, just in various places. My lighting is just horrible. It's just so stinking glarish. And let's get some of this. Put some around here. Do some more on this side here. Excuse me. Just like this. So I think that'll do. Maybe a little bit over here in this corner. All right, so I'm going to say that's pretty good on the wheels and such. And excuse me, I think the last thing I'm going to have to do is weather this barrel cover here. So let's take a look at that. So what I'm going to use is this Tamiya Weathering Master weathering powder set, whatever you want to call it. And just using the little applicator brush that comes with it, I'm just going to get some on the bristles. And then I'm just going to lightly hit the highlights like this. Tamiya Weathering Powders, I think that's what it's called. Like that. See, this is, I'm not doing this like, you know, fabric on on a figure with all the shading and highlighting and stuff. So if that's your gig, then don't judge me too harshly, but that's the way I do it right there. See, already that makes the detail pop out a little bit more. Just kind of a dry brushing technique really with these weathering powders, and they really seem to work good. All right, so there's that. So I think perhaps that's it. So I'm going to call this video the end, I believe. So ends part number 8 of the Dragon 1/35 scale SdKfz184 Elefant. So if you liked this episode and you think it was pretty groovy, hit the like button. If you want to see more of this particular build or any of my other builds I've done, hit the subscribe button. And stay tuned, because the next installment will be the final reveal, my thoughts on the kit, and the slideshow of the finished model. So, as always, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.